because hope comes with it disappointment. Later that evening, Annie was invited over to our house for dinner because her granny had to work overnight. Standing on a stool to help, I asked Aunt Irene when Annie's mama was gonna just come on home. "Don't be jealous of Annie," she said, straining the water off a steaming mass of spaghetti. Her apron was faded and stained. "I'm not jealous," I said, marveling at her ability to see into my little heart. "Yes, you are," Aunt Irene said, "and that's the one thing the Lord cannot abide, covetousness. You gotta pray that off your spirit. Money ain't the root of all evil, it's envy." I dropped my shoulders and tucked my head, hoping she would see my shame and pet me. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize to me. Give your sorry to the Lord." When I was a child, I was tender as a bruise. I knew that my aunt didn't like crybabies, so I taught myself how to cry without water, but I couldn't control my trembly lip. Aunt Irene spread the spaghetti and sauce in a pan and slipped it in the oven while I melted into a pool of voiceless contrition.
The character made when she said Atlanta's
It
like a
wasn't
black
me, it
soap
wasn't
opera.
me.
That's right. I won't put that on you.
Well, I do think that, these people are, new members of the black metal, working all day and night. And when you are not working all day and night, you have more time for drama. And they took the best advantage of the time they had. Now they are each other's business, but they are in each other's business. And also, soap operas also have a certain glamour about them as well. So there's the messiness, but there's also the glamour, the clothes, the outings, the organizations, all of the things. And for Niecy, she had never even heard of such things before. Now she is married into the middle of it.
Did writing this book and thinking so deeply about mothers and daughters, did it make you think about how your own mother has shaped your ideas about what it means to be a grown woman?
I moved back home to Atlanta because I wanted to get to know the city again, but also just get to know my parents, my family again as an adult. Because, when you live far away and you come home on holidays, you are knowing your parents when you are sleeping in your childhood bedroom. And you can't really be the grown-up you are. And so I moved home and I spent a lot more time at home. And I think I had the fantasy, how Aunt Irene says to Niecy once when Niecy's getting ready to leave the house, she says, we're gonna have a drink and I'm gonna talk to you like a grown woman, and they get to know each other in a different way. I think that I had that fantasy. And I realized though that fantasy was not shared. And so I even think sometimes that this novel was my own imagination trying to fill in the blanks of what it was like for the generation ahead of us. Because, I know you wrote a book called Things I Should Have Told my daughter, or Things I Didn't Tell my daughter. But Things I Should Have Told my daughter. Pearl published her journals. Like, she put it all out there. If you want to know what it was like, you should read that book. But, most of our mothers are not publishing their diaries. Can you believe we were founded in 1881 and we didn't have our first black woman president in 1987?
Wow.
Like, it's hard for us, for those of us who went to Spelman during that time, it's hard for us to even get our heads around Spelman with anything other than a black woman at the helm. Well, when I was writing this set in the 50s, what I learned research-wise, I was not aware of the strong working class history of Spelman College. I feel like people look at Spelman graduates and imagine a Spelman graduate kind of miniaturized into a freshman, like the same person, just smaller. But Atlanta is a black mecca because we have these 6 HBCUs that not only serve the black middle class, but created a black middle class, changed the trajectory of families. And so that was one of the things that I really leaned on, this idea. Like I read A Mighty Justice by W. Johnson Roundtree, who talked about a pair of sisters. One worked as a maid full-time. Sister could go to school for a year, and the next year her sister went and worked for those same people full-time, living maid, so her sister could have a year until they both had their education. And so I wanted to capture and honor that time in our history. I wanted to honor what our foremothers did, and I didn't even know about it. Like, I do believe you can be an heir to a story that you didn't even know about because it's in you and you just may not have known. Out, so to speak. But I've stopped saying what I'm not going to do. Because I used to swear up and down I was not going to write about the past. Because I was like really into writing the moment. Like I felt like as a black writer, people are always trying to make me say, oh, it's your job to fill in the blanks. You know, you have to tell your great-grandmother's story because she couldn't. But I was thinking, okay, if I'm writing my great-grandmother's story, then what is my great-granddaughter going to write my story? So I felt like I was going to write my story just to make that one less thing for the future to have to worry about. And then here I am and turned around and write a historical novel. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to write anything that's not said in the South because I don't want to write anything that's not said in the South. So I feel like if I say I won't, I'll end up doing that. And I feel like it's enough people in New York. They write their stories. You know, like there's so many stories already set in New York. So I doubt it. I doubt it. That's what I'll say. I doubt it. Thank you. Thank you. In this, besides the question of hope, I wanted to think a lot about motherhood and the challenges of it. I think that people assume there's a cultural expectation that plays differently in different quarters, but that black women are inherently maternal. So like the people who hire black women to work in their houses to take care of their children, the idea is that this, you know, the black woman is going to be this kind of stand-in mom for the children and love these children like her own. It's such a problematic understanding of black women's temperament that has its roots in slavery. Yet there's also the same assumption in black communities that mothering comes somehow natural to people. And I think that takes away from the question of the labor of it, the work of it. Yeah. And I want us to all think about the expectations we have of the women in our lives. What are we asking of them? And where does it become unreasonable? So that is one of the things. And another thing I want us to think about in this book is so much of this plot happens because women did not have access to safe, reliable contraception. Okay. And as our rights are being rolled back right before our very eyes, I want us to really think about the idea: how can you control your life if you cannot control your fertility? And it's not just your life in particular. Like if you look at these characters, other people, you could be like living your life, minding your business, and a child needs a home, and then you have a baby you didn't expect to have. Like, so it's not just one person. This question of, well, we think about Planned Parenthood, and we use, it just brings to mind that organization. But just think about what incredible liberation it was that people could plan, not only when they would be parents, but if.
Place in the book writing process, and with that, how do you think it might change the landscape in the future?
Pearl and I are very analog people. Like I write my books on a typewriter. Pearl writes her books by hand. So we're probably not the ones to ask about this. But I will say this. I tell my students, when you ask AI to write your story for you, I think it's like asking someone to eat a piece of cake for you. Like, don't you want to be the one to
experience it? Yeah.
Like, you cannot get the benefits of the growth that you have as a person if you don't write it yourself. I do think the AI, it is plagiarism. They used to call that plagiarism.
Yes. How about that? Yes.
So
stealing. Basically.
Good answer.
Yes.
basically.
Building an institution is very different than writing a book, than writing a play. And oftentimes I think that part of what we're expected to take on, because we have to as Black writers, is not only being an artist, not only being a writer, but also building a publishing house, building a theater, building a network that will be able to award prizes that are legitimate prizes for people. And it's a very demanding kind of expectation, and I have tried it. I mean, I have published books, I have run a small theater, and the problem is that doesn't have much to do with the creation of the art that you started out trying to do. So it's very, very difficult. What we need is another layer of people who want to create independent institutions, who want to create independent Black publishing houses that will publish writers, and also distribution. Distribution is a big problem because you can publish your own book and you look at that box of books and you say, I did this, I published it, and then there's 40 boxes of it in your basement. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to get it out to where it needs to go? So I think that's a discussion that I think about a lot, just because we need not only the artists and the writers who can create wonderful books, wonderful plays, wonderful poems. We need to think about how we can create institutions with people running them who want to run institutions. Not people running them who are really poets, not people running them who are really playwrights.
Reach grown people, because I want to read your grown story.
What does supper symbolize?
Well, I will say that I did like the idea. There's a moment in the story when one of the characters says, we're from these towns, they name them after flowers, but very little blooms here. But also, I did, want to think about the coming of it, like Janie and her pear tree and this idea of blooming and sweetness. And so yes, am I getting this question? Are you asking me if this story also got because if so, yes.
Okay.
We have room for one more question.
No, Adrian is in charge.
My problem is I'm an indie Black bookseller in my independent bookstore.
Okay.
And I fight for my life putting our stories in everybody's hands. Now, I know based off your name, I won't have that problem. But say I get somebody in there and they're like, oh, I don't know. The issue is, what would you think I should tell them? Because I'm going to tell what the story is about and be real with them, but they're always clutching their pearls.
Well, I feel like, you have a lot of approaches. Depends on your personality. You can do the hard guilt trip. I have found that to be effective.
Yes.
I do.
And you can do the guilt trip. You can do, you can tell them about the interesting parts. Like with Ken, you might say, this book is like I told somebody, this book is like Sula meets beaches. I think almost, I want to say like analog process, but it's how we connect. And then every time you read a book and you talk about it with another people, then you make community with that person. And that's how, it's a slow process. Pearl, it was over 20 years ago when I wrote my first book. And I wasn't getting the pass along. I wasn't getting the media. I told, y'all may have heard me tell this story before, but I will tell you this, because this is a good story. It's a Pearl story. Okay, I wrote this book, and my promotional campaign involved me handing out postcards. I would go to coffee shops and put down some postcards. I would ask my friends, if the people at your job, if they have like little mailboxes, maybe you could give somebody some postcards, and I had blank postcards and I put labels on the back that said things, and I was like, and people are gonna see my postcard and they're gonna read my book, and that didn't really work like that. And then I went to a writers conference, and there was all the kind of happening people who were so big in New York, and I had been accepted off the wait list, so I was already kind of like the wait list person. And they were all sitting around and they were discussing what they had worn to their luncheon to meet the media. Was it better when you have a luncheon to meet the media to dress casually? Or should you dress fancy when someone is paying for a catered luncheon for you to meet the media? And I was like, wait a minute, these people out here having luncheons to meet the media? Is that how they got on the NPR? Because one of them was a woman who had written a book, and she had been on NPR talking about Gertrude Stein's hash brownie recipe. And I was like, I just thought that the NPR people had somehow heard that this girl knew about this hash brownie recipe. I did not know that she had had a luncheon to meet the media. And so I went to my little room and I was crying. And then I spoke to Pearl and I said, I just feel like I'm just so far behind. You know, other people having lunches to meet the media. And Pearl said to me, in what way are you behind? Did you write this book? I thought you wrote this book to tell the people the truth. I didn't know you wrote this book trying to have lunch.
If you were listening closely today, you can already feel those characters walking alongside you, right? Bernice and Annie, women navigating loyalty, sisterhood, and survival. The kind of characters who linger, the kind you defend, the kind you see in yourself. This is lasting fiction. That is literally literary craft at its highest level. Thank you, Tayari.